How does it feel to become subordinate to your former peer? I got promoted. And you, being sent back to the US as a mere staff member after just 3 years in Germany, proves you were just dead weight, huh?
Every day, I'm met with such cold words from my female boss. It seems she's intent on painting me as the guy who can't do his job. Her task assignments are utterly unreasonable, clearly meant to harass me alone. But if that's what she wants, I've come to accept it. I couldn't see any other way to make it up to her. However, I was made to realize that this was a mistake by someone. Today, she brought in a heap of documents again.
Summarize these papers in under 2 hours. Fail, and you're fired.
Enough of this fruitless exchange. Just a sec. There, done.
What?
I'm Tom Jackson. Currently, I'm facing a dilemma at work. The company I joined operates globally in the tech sector. I'm currently at the headquarters in the US, but until a few months ago, I was working at the branch in Germany. Remembering the time spent with my colleagues in Germany, I already feel nostalgic. That was when I received the order to return to the US. Yes, thank you. I'll be taking my leave now. Exiting the branch manager's office, I head back to my own.
Hey, Tom. So the boss said, as expected, huh?
That was my colleague, Michael. The conversation was in German. Yay, just as everyone thought, I'm heading back to the US. Hearing this, other colleagues gather around.
What? So it was a transfer. Thought it might happen someday, but it's gonna be lonely without you.
Our go-to ace is leaving Germany. I'm worried about the future.
Well, Tom was here for that project. Now that it's done, the US needs him, I guess.
Here's to Tom's new beginning. Let's celebrate.
Moving from the US to Germany for work was a challenge. I wasn't very good at German, and of course, knew no one. The team at the German branch welcomed me warmly, helping me grow at an incredible pace to the point where they'd call me an ace. Though I'd never consider myself as such, I was honored and happy. Before returning to the US, my colleagues threw a farewell party. They love their parties, often throwing them for birthdays or project completions. I'm not great with alcohol, but just being in the atmosphere was more than enough fun. And that day, the mood was anything but somber, filled with good times.
Hey, Tom. Maria got cozy with you. But what's next?
Michael, more cheerful when drunk, asked, draping an arm around me. Maria, a female colleague 4 years junior to me and Michael, had recently asked me out. I hadn't told anyone, yet Michael knew. Germans tend to be quite open-minded, so it wouldn't be surprising if Maria had talked about it herself. Oh, I turned her down politely. It'd be difficult to start something with me returning to the US, and I told her she deserves someone better. Hearing this, Michael sighed. Man, that's a shame. Maria's the office beauty, hardworking and a great girl. I'd date her in a heartbeat. Well, she's too good for me, honestly. As I laughed, Michael turned serious for a moment. Wonder what kind of wonderful person you'll end up with, Tom. Yeah, I guess so.
Make sure you tell me when that happens.
Of course. Honestly, I couldn't even picture myself in a relationship. I was beginning to think maybe I'd end up living alone my whole life. But hearing Michael say that made me really happy. I hope such a future comes someday, I thought, if only a little. And so, I returned to the headquarters in the US after 3 years.
This is Tom Jackson, who will be working with us from today.
The department head, Jane Smith, introduced me in a very brief manner. I'm Tom Jackson. I've worked here for 6 years since my fresh graduate days, and I was in the Germany branch for 3 years. There might be some areas where I lack, but I look forward to working with you. After I introduced myself, everyone in the office applauded. I was in a newly established department, different from before I went to Germany, so most faces were unfamiliar. Except for Jane Smith, the department head.
The seat's over there.
She said after the morning assembly, pointing somewhere in the distance. Obviously, over there wasn't enough for me to go on, so when I asked for more details, she coldly brushed me off with, "It's where nothing's placed, obviously. Can't you figure that out?" So I found a likely spot on my own and settled in. Phew, I'm worried about the future. Back at the headquarters seat after a long while, I felt both nostalgia and anxiety as I reminisced about the past. Actually, Jane Smith, the cold female boss from earlier, and I joined the company in the same year. That year, there were only 2 of us as new employees, so we often went out for drinks to share information and occasionally vent our frustrations. It didn't take long for us to become irreplaceable to each other. In the summer of our second year as working adults, when we were 24, Jane and I started dating. We kept it a secret within the company to not affect our work, but since we worked on the same projects, we understood each other's work struggles and business well. Being colleagues and friends from the start, our relationship felt very comfortable, and we eventually started thinking about marriage. However, one day when I was 27, I had been offered a transfer to the Germany branch from the upper management. It was a decision left up to me, given it was an overseas transfer, but my mind was already made up. It's the chance I've always wanted. I want to go to Germany. This company had overseas branches before I joined, and despite its headquarters being in the US, the experience at the economically central Germany branch was something everyone aspired to. Of course, not everyone who wished could go. Only a select few recognized by the upper management were offered such opportunities. I never assumed I'd be chosen, but I worked my hardest towards that goal. I was overjoyed that my efforts seemed to have paid off. That's why I think I was too carried away at the time. I was so focused on my own happiness that I failed to consider the feelings of the most important person to me. After work that day, I called Jane, who was my girlfriend at the time. Back then, I used to call her by her first name, Jane, to our usual pub we frequented, even before we started dating. I was completely elated. I drank eagerly, exploding with joy to Jane. And so, I was so happy, I answered on the spot. Probably heading to Germany in 2 months. I'm just so excited. I wonder if my German will be good enough. Jane didn't change her expression at all, while I talked excitedly. It's hard to describe. Not joy, anger, sorrow, or pleasure, but more like she was completely stunned. I had never doubted that what made me happy would also make Jane happy, so I couldn't understand why she had such an expression. Maybe she's just shocked because it's so sudden. That was all I thought, still not considering anything but myself, happily talking about life in Germany. And the reason I wasn't nervous about my first move abroad was that I had assumed Jane will go to Germany with me. Since we were already thinking about marriage, it was natural for me to imagine such a plan in my head, never considering a scenario where we'd be apart. But at that moment, I forgot something simple: to put feelings. However, what stopped my buoyant chatter was Jane's voice, tinged with anger.
How can you say that with a smile?
I never imagined I'd be reprimanded, and seeing Jane's face shocked me. Even more because tears were overflowing from her eyes. What do you mean? Before I could finish my bewildered question, Jane continued with an even stronger tone.
What do you think of me? Going to Germany. Why are you so happy to say that? You've only thought about yourself. You didn't care about me at all, did you? I was a fool to trust you. Just go by yourself if you like. Goodbye.
Just after saying that, she roughly placed money on the table and left the restaurant. Of course, I chased after her, but I lost sight of her while paying the bill, and she didn't respond to any calls or visits to her house. We still saw each other at work, but couldn't discuss anything personal, and any attempt I made to speak to her outside of work-related matters was ignored. My messages didn't even get read, so I was probably blocked. Honestly, I didn't understand why Jane was so angry. But one thing I understood from her was that she felt terribly hurt because I had only thought of myself. I wanted you to come to Germany with me. I never said, leading to the misunderstanding that I wanted to break up and leave the US alone, or maybe she was angry. I decided to move without consulting her. I was wrong to assume that dating meant we would get married or move to Germany together. But even though I wanted to apologize, I was told to never talk to me again. I realized the trust I had lost could not be regained. We ended up separating in a situation where it wasn't clear who dumped whom. So, it makes sense that she would be cold to me after returning to the US 3 years later. Moreover, she seems to still be single, and while she is serious and competent at her work, her relationship with colleagues seems poor, with rumors saying she gave up on being a woman to live for her work, and acts high and mighty because she can do her job. The Jane I knew was kind, hard-working, bright, and not the type to be disliked by colleagues. Maybe she became reckless because of what happened between us. I know it sounds self-centered, but I couldn't help feeling responsible. So, no matter how coldly she treated me or how unreasonable the work she assigned was, I never complained. Jane would assign an impossible amount of work as if to spite me or insult and mock me.
You couldn't even handle that much. What were you doing in Germany? Just playing around for 3 years. How lucky you are. How does it feel to be subordinate to your former peer? Being sent back to the US after 3 years shows just how useless you were.
Such words became a daily occurrence, and it seemed she wanted to label me as the guy who can't do his job. Her task assignments were clearly meant to harass, but I was not just playing around in Germany. I was confident I could do satisfactory work if I seriously faced it. If she wanted to see me as the guy who can't do his job, then I was willing to be seen that way. Right or wrong, I didn't see any other way to atone. But my feelings were unknown to Jane or any other colleagues. I, myself, became the subject of bad rumors. He worked in Germany branch, but can't do his job at all. To think such a useless guy could go to Germany, what a letdown. It's not surprising. This is how I started to feel out of place at the headquarters in the US. Remembering the time spent with my colleagues in Germany makes my current situation feel truly painful. But it's my fault Jane isn't happy. It might be self-centered, but seeing her now makes me feel that way. And yet, I don't deserve to live happily and smile. At some point, that's how I started to feel. Then, one day,
"Oh, Jackson."
Walking down the hallway after a break, I heard a familiar voice. Johnson. There stood Johnson, my direct boss before I went to Germany 3 years ago. He was a department head at the time, but had since been promoted and was now an executive. We hadn't had a chance to interact directly since my return, and this was the first time I had seen him.
"I heard you'd come back, but I'm glad we finally met. How are you doing?"
Johnson was one of the people I respected the most, having been very kind to me since I joined the company. I had always wanted to meet him, and I was very happy, but I couldn't exactly say I was doing well. I didn't want to complain during our first meeting in a long time, nor did I want to lie. Caught in my hesitation, Johnson cheerfully suggested,
"Tomorrow's Friday. How about we catch up over dinner?"
"Really, I'd love to. Please, let's do it." For the first time since returning to the US, I felt like I had something to look forward to. After work the next day, I went out to drink with Johnson. Coincidentally, we ended up at the same place where Jane and I had parted ways 3 years ago. We talked mostly about time in Germany, which brightened my spirits and reminded me of happier times. He also shared news of his child being born during the last 3 years, and time flew by as we caught up. When our conversation dwindled, Johnson grew serious.
"Even though I couldn't see your face, rumors reach me since we're in the same company. What happened to you? This isn't like you, especially between you and Jane. What exactly happened?"
He might have invited me out because he sensed something was wrong. Feeling it rude to dodge the question, I decided to tell him everything. Since I had even kept my relationship with Jane a secret from Johnson, I expected him to be surprised. But
"How many years do you think I've been your boss? I knew you two were dating all along."
his words caught me off guard. However, he seemed unaware of our breakup and was shocked by the current state of our relationship, given how close we were as colleagues and lovers. But all this is my fault. She is not to blame. I only thought about myself and ended up changing her life. It's only natural she resents me. The seeds I sowed mean I can only accept whatever comes my way as atonement. After hearing my story, Johnson said,
"Do you really think that's what's best for both of you?"
"What?" His unexpected question left me at a loss for words. He continued,
Do you truly believe that's the best you can do? By atoning this way, do you think it's right to keep her painted as a bad woman? To me, it looks like you're afraid of rejection and are running away from facing the issue.
I was taken aback. I had been so sure that this was the only way to atone, but I hadn't considered if there were other things I should do instead.
There are rumors in the company, and there's talk of reassessing Chain's position as a manager. If you continue like this, you'll waste your 3 years in Germany. Your actions now are leading to mutual destruction with her. Think seriously about what you should really do, what can truly make her happy. Face the problem, don't run from it.
He was right. I've been helped by Johnson countless times since I was a new graduate, but it seems I'm utterly hopeless when it comes to Jane. I felt deeply ashamed. Johnson, thank you. I was wrong. I won't run away anymore. When I said that, Johnson sighed and then smiled.
That's more like it, Jackson. You have the attitude to face your mistakes, and that's what I like about you. Now, face Jane properly.
His words further motivated me. Then, on the next workday, 2 hours before leaving, Jane came to my desk.
Finish summarizing this within 2 hours before the end of the day. If you can't handle this, you know what will happen, right? If I report your work performance in the next internal review, you're probably getting fired. Or maybe, at best, you'll be sent to some backwater.
Saying that, she dumped a file full of transaction documents with associated companies onto my desk. Normally, summarizing this amount of documents wouldn't be possible in 2 hours, but she coldly smirked and issued the challenge. But I was done with such fruitless exchanges. Understood. Just a moment. There, done.
What?
Usually, even if I had already finished the work Shane requested, I would submit it right at the deadline or slightly later, using the spare time to organize documents or help colleagues, making the work environment more manageable. I had been pretending to be inefficient in front of Jane, but no more running away. I thought these documents might need organizing someday, so I prepped them in advance. I think it should be fine. I've just sent the compiled data to the shared file, so please check it.
What? What did you do on your own?
I've summarized the requested range and also listed information on rival companies' associated businesses.
What?
Jane was visibly surprised by the unexpected turn.
You must be messing around. Don't underestimate me.
Initially, that's what she said, but after returning to her desk and briefly checking, she didn't find fault with the work. However, after everyone started leaving at the end of the day, she called me into a meeting room saying, "Jackson, a moment."
What's the meaning of earlier? Was that some kind of jab at me? I don't know when you prepared such documents, but if you can actually do it, why not always work seriously? You've been mocking me all this time, haven't you?
Her face flushed with anger. She seemed to have tears in her eyes. My heart ached, because I realized she had been suffering all this time. I'm sorry for not facing you properly. I never truly considered your feelings, always focusing on myself. Ever since we parted ways before I went to Germany, I've been filled with regret. She seemed surprised to hear such a confession out of the blue. then quickly turned her face away.
What are you trying to do bringing this up now? Can we not talk about this anymore?
It was indeed too late. Why didn't I try everything in my power to face this sooner? My lack of action tormented me. When my transfer to Germany was decided, I was just overjoyed. I had always dreamed of this, and it becoming a reality made me so happy. But I never achieved that dream because, in reality, my dream was to go to Germany with you.
What?
Jane looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. I'm sorry. I was an idiot. I just assumed you'd come to Germany with me because we were dating, without considering it was a huge decision for you. It was a decision that required a significant commitment from you. Yet, I never expressed it in words hurt you, and was too afraid of getting hurt myself to share my feelings. I should have had a proper discussion with you. I was scared of rejection and just went to Germany, and after returning to the US, I've avoided facing you and the reality to the fullest. I tried to be what you wanted, thinking that by doing so, I was atoning for my sins. It's foolish. That wouldn't make you happy. What I really should have done was to face you and listen to your feelings. Throughout my confession, Jane kept her gaze averted, quietly sobbing. Is she crying? Jane. As I tried to get a closer look, she turned away from me and she said in a tearful voice, "Why bring this up now?" I thought, that's why it's been so hard to even look at you. She must have been suffering more from pushing me away. Knowing her kind nature, I realized she must have loathed herself for treating others harshly over these 3 years.
If you had just said, let's go to Germany together, none of this would have happened, idiot.
That sentence held everything. Her cold demeanor and work-first attitude were just ways to distract herself from her pain. I should have faced this sooner. No matter how much I think about it, I can't go back in time. But there are countless things I can do now. Despite various emotions interfering, I voiced my thoughts candidly. I might not be in the position to say this, pretending not to notice, and maybe I won't be forgiven, but I'm truly sorry. I'll be honest with you. I love you. Whether it was going to Germany or anywhere else, I couldn't forget about you. I don't care how much you scold me. If you hate me, that's okay. If you don't want to see my face, I'll leave the company and disappear from your life. I just want you to be happy. You deserve happiness. Your happiness is my happiness. That's right. Even if I made new friends in Germany or received affection from wonderful women, my heart never changed. I couldn't imagine a future without Jane by my side. Saying this now might make me look foolish. No, I'm definitely going to be scorned. But if by some miracle we could start over together, I wouldn't make the same mistake. And Jane's response was,
After all the horrible things I did to you out of spite, why would you say that to me? I never really forgot about you either.
Then, both of us cried more than any adult should, talking about everything that had gone wrong between us. It might be difficult to return to how we were 3 years ago, but this time, I don't want to make any mistakes. I want to gradually regain the trust of our colleagues and make up for the 3 years we were apart by making her smile, by making her happy. And someday, I'd like to go to Germany together and introduce her to Michael